Good morning. Welcome to Pursuit 365 Real Estate and Finance Fridays with your host, Shelly Smee. That's me. Today I'm joined by Paige Brettle from IG Private Wealth Management with Jim Doyle and Associates. And we are going to discuss topics in building financial wealth, especially for women. That is something that I know Paige is very passionate about. As well, she is a proponent of the holistic wealth framework, which we did speak of in one of our previous podcasts. So, welcome, Paige. How are you today?
Doing great, Shelly. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Actually, I
So,
have copies of the book right here. I'm not shilling for it, but it could change your life.
it really could. And, we did have the writer of the book on the podcast about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm having a brain fart because, that's just the way my brain works at my age. Can you show the books again? And we will
Yeah,
put a link.
Keisha, good old Keisha
Keisha,
Blair.
right.
Yep.
Keisha Blair. So when you're working from this framework, do you want to, you use a term that I'd never really heard before, but you actually have an accreditation in wealth trauma, or I'm not getting that
Oh,
right.
yeah.
No, I'm
I
not
have a
getting
few kind of interesting, I'm working towards my certified financial planning designation currently. And once I
right.
get it, I'm actually getting it so I can become a licensed financial therapist.
A
And
financial therapist.
yeah.
So is that like if you're okay, so we're going to get into a topic that I've kind of gotten into with a few different people through different avenues, but our relationship to money is really affected by our origin and our money story we tell ourselves. And I don't think, when you're 20 and you get your first credit card for the Bay and it's 28.5% interest and you're a student, I don't think you really realize how credit and money works until you've charged up a credit card too much and had to deal with that. I'm sure there's a lot of other things related to some people can save and some people are spenders and other people are planners and other people aren't. And do you look at that, or where does this all begin?
Oh man, where does it begin? Well, we're not going to blame the parents or the school system 'cause they're easy targets, you know. Yeah. So just scooting back to your initial the trauma of money comment, that was my kind of gateway into this. I met with Keisha initially because she presented at my company about her book. 'Cause she's actually our company's youngest and the largest recipient of an insurance policy in our company's history. So that book and that framework came about from as a result of her husband passing away suddenly. She was 31, he was 34. He literally went to work. He was an accountant at Ontario Hydro. He had stomach pains. He had to line up out the door, didn't go get medical attention. She was like, Garfield, go to the hospital. I'll meet you there after work. And 3 hours later, walked out with a bag of his belongings. He passed. And
That's
she had a, yeah, I know. She had a 2-year-old at home and
completely
an 8-year-old.
tragic and like you can't even plan for something like that.
No, but interestingly enough, they had, which is quite admirable and surprising in people who are that young. We have it in our practice. Luckily, we're a multi generational practice. We have a number of legacy. Like we've got the grandparents, the parents, and the kids. But often you're not having these conversations at home. 100% in my household, we didn't have it. And, my mom's side of the family went through a huge estate actually over the period 30, 40 years. She's literally still in proceedings from my grandmother passing in April 2007.
Wow.
So I mean, money has people do crazy things sometimes. And anyway, so I got really interested in her story and her book because it's a beautifully written book, and I'm a bibliophile, and I love
Mhm.
like the weight of the pages, the font, like the richness of the feeling of the book itself, and the content. It's just really well written. She's very highly educated. I'm not going to go on and on about her, but like highly recommend the book. And where it really struck me was that I came into my role here at IG in a roundabout way. I was a cold caller actually for a team of advisors. That was my initial entry point. And then I ended up creating events and doing marketing for them. And after a year of that with two different teams at IG, I went and got headhunted by Jim, who I currently work with. And I'm in my 13th year working with Jim. I've only ever worked at IG, so I'm a bit of a unicorn. And I never would have said, I was talking to myself over the weekend, like I do, and I just could never have predicted because there's this thing I feel we all feel. We were like, are we where we're supposed to be? Like, what is
Mhm.
going to happen next? And it can create a lot of anxiety. Beyond fear of missing out or you only live once, there's just this, like, you know, I feel obligation that we come into our days with, where, we're meant to be producing or doing something
Doing
of
instead of being. But in the doing, like, this is where I've come to after 28 years of my career, is I really do feel a calling to help people. And even though there's the situational frustrations with people who maybe aren't as collaborative, or losing on a multiple offer, or some of the things that really speak to my competitive nature, at the end of the day, when people are either getting their keys or moving out or moving in, and they truly feel like they've landed in a place that they can call home, or they've finished a cycle of their investment stream, or whatever the case may be, I've helped participate in the financial advancement, because I really do see ownership of real estate in that framework. Um, and it just, like, I look at the families, and I look at and you probably see that now, being in your role for over 10 years, there's a continuity in families, and there's something special about helping people and then watching their families grow. And then it's sort of like being an embedded correspondent in other people's lives. You're kind of there to witness and to help in whatever role that you're in, but you're not really part of their family. But when they need you, you get the call. And I don't know, I kind of look at it as a calling, because you do never know what's going to come around the corner. And you kind of have to have a belief or a faith that you are in the right place, or you've just got weird head games with yourself, and it becomes really challenging if you're always questioning, am I in the right place? Do you find that?
there was a lot going on right there that I was like,
I
wow,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm loving all that. So I'm just gonna kind of like circle back and
You
say,
bet.
well, number one, yes. I mean, I think this is very common to all high achieving professionals, especially women. That sense of, is it enough? Have I given it my all? Did I leave any, I's undotted or T's uncrossed? Did I snip that thread? Is the coffee pot still on? Um, and I think all it comes down to is that desire to really be your best and do your best because you know that you can. And not knowing the future, but you really want it to be what you want it to be. And I think that's just human nature, right? We want to live our best lives. And how do we go about doing that? And the beautiful thing I think I heard you say, and I know I feel it as well, is helping people to live their best lives, right? Whatever that means, whether it's the financial accomplishment of a goal. And what you highlighted with how you help and how you serve is the fact that you're helping people close loops. And man, that feels good, right? A closed loop,
Yeah.
especially if there's money at the end of that loop.
Well, or if there's a sense of autonomy, like, oh,
Yeah.
I can never for the time that I am living now in my own home and paying my own mortgage, there is no landlord going to send me a notice. I think that's the number one thing I do hear from people, especially in Vancouver, is the uncertainty when you're a renter of a privately owned property, not necessarily owned by a corporation, but if you're in a rental situation, you just never know when you're going to get that notice, and it's very unsettling. And I don't necessarily want to get into a huge rabbit hole of the whole difficulty of the lack of inventory and the challenges for the housing crisis, because that's not why we got on the call today. But it's certainly, providing certainty in people's future and financial planning, I think it's, as you said, you're not going to blame parents or the school system, but I just still don't understand why this isn't more of a core learning path in even elementary school. I mean, I can remember when I first started getting an allowance, we weren't allowed to spend it all. We had to save some, and that used to piss me off because I wanted candy. But, like teaching your children about money, I think it's like a core life skill. And so many people don't have it.
Yeah, actually, to that end, I believe Ontario has just rolled out a graduate. It's a feature of having you have to have this course before you can graduate. I think they're going to roll it out probably next year in the curriculum. So I can't speak to it because I don't fully know, and I know it's only in
Right.
Ontario though. And it's yeah, but to speak to your point, like we're dealing with generations upon generations of people without real financial education making big ticket decisions, and now we've got the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer in the history with the boomers on their way to the next level of whatever that looks like. And you got people who maybe do they have the skills to manage sudden windfall, or a lot of questions come up, right? Also, death and taxes, like, from settling estates yourself through the real estate side, it's complicated. Like, a lot of people don't understand how much work until they're thrust into that role and they're underprepared. And then it's like, wait, what do I have to do? Like, I just thought it was a cool title, like executor, executrix. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're going to circle back to your money trauma thing, because to me this is fascinating.
Well, yeah, I
Um,
actually want to. I'll loop that in here. So, all rivers lead to the same ocean is kind of the way I look at our conversation here today, and about money, and about real estate, and about private wealth management, all of the facets in the holistic wealth framework. It really is all part of like a big ball of wax, because we are our money and we are our decisions. We've created the money that we have or the situation that we're in, and we have to figure out our way through it. And that's what I loved about that book when I first heard about it, which was like February 2021, was it finally connected me to the work that I do. Because even though I've been in the practice for a very long time, and it is valuable, right? Insurance is great, risk management, right? Investing, because you have to keep ahead of inflation, cash flow management. We all hear it, cash is king, right? Right. So, we know what we should be doing or could be doing often. It's not about not having knowledge. It's about not taking the action consistently to get the outcome that we ultimately need and want.
well, I found in my own personal situation, I really did need guidance. And just because on the outside I look successful, it did take, a while to build a bit of a nest egg. I didn't really have a nest egg until I had sold my first property and moved to my second property, and I had a little bit of money left over. And I got some investment advice on that. And it was through my parents' investment advisor because I didn't know where else to go. But I really, until recently, didn't understand how my investment advisor was on one side of the coin, but really I needed a really good accountant. And I've since found a good accountant. But my accountant that I used to have didn't give me super great advice about how to save money on my taxes. And that's really, I think kind of the whole point when you're in business is to try and figure that whole piece out. But when it comes to actually saving for your retirement or your children's education or for what happens to everything you've worked for once you're gone, it can be very complex. And then our government comes in with new regulations around generational transfer of wealth or, disposing of your property. It's super complicated. So I'm not surprised that, the designations that you're working on, those are really big courses, aren't they?
Yeah, certified financial planner is a huge one. And then the financial therapist one will probably also be. I haven't gone deep into the curriculum for that, but I know that that's where I feel that I could, you know, create the most value for people because yeah, it's wonderful and it's so necessary to have the cash flow management, to understand, how to protect what you've built, to understand how to pass on what you built with the least amount of taxable impact, to understand taxes. And I can tell you, I get an accountant to do my taxes because they are complicated and the goalposts do move. And that's kind of the thing with finance, period, is legislation and the rules. They can shift. And do you have the time to go in and do the due diligence to understand the long standing implications? Because a lot of times in our financial lives, it's woven like a tapestry, and especially if you're partnered up. And when you pull a thread over here, it's unraveling something over here that you might not be aware of.
Totally. So let's get back to the money trauma thing. So what do you think keeps people from taking charge of their finances?
Probably
Do you,
overwhelm
right.
and not knowing where to start. I consider myself beyond fortunate to have fallen into the industry, and really, like you said, it is a calling because I'm here at my office almost every day. Jim has specifically said when I go on my vacation on Thursday, do not bring your computer, do not be doing work.
And are you
Um,
going to listen?
well, I mean, maybe, I'm going to bring the computer because, like, there's something about having access to your email that just, it gives you that, like, sense of comfort. I don't know if I'm completely weird on that, but if I can see kind of what's coming in and I just feel like, okay, I know what's going on. You can't predict the future. This is a fallacy, this idea that we can have certainty or that you can plan for every eventuality. You can't. But you can do the best you can with what you got and the knowledge that you have, and trusting people who have been around the block. And Jim is my ballast on things. So I am listening. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I got that. I do need the vacation. Haven't gone anywhere since December 2022. And to be quite
It's
honest,
time. Yeah.
well, but you know what? Part of that is the fact that I really love what I do. And I really am fascinated by all the aspects of money management. Like I say to people, I don't care how gauche it sounds, but like I love money.
And that is something that I think is one of the biggest money problems people have is when people say, "Oh, well, I'm not in it for the money," like especially with realtors. It's like everybody trades their time for money. It's kind of the way our capitalist system is set up. You are going to earn money by giving your time and attention to a particular whatever it is, whether you're a hostess at a restaurant to the CEO of TELUS. Like, you are trading your time for money. So doesn't it make sense that you should actually appreciate at a very base level in your own self-esteem that your time is worth something? And I in all my years of training realtors, there's often this disconnect in not just real estate but in human beings, that like their self-worth tied to what they think they can earn or they can't earn, or their potential, their earning potential is often determined by their self-worth. And I mean, I see some people in, not just in our industry, but in many industries, that aren't necessarily super smart in the book smarts kind of way, but they're engaging, they know how to communicate with people, and they truly believe they deserve it. And they just, because of their belief that they are worthy and that they deserve it, even though they might not be the absolute number one top person in their field, they attract people to them because they have that winning attitude. And
Okay, you
people
know what?
want,
I want to highlight here. I want to highlight this because this is actually something that's really key in the trauma of money. Okay, that self belief piece.
mm-hmm,
And the fact that a lot of people had a bit of a rocky start to getting into their career or their life, right? And they don't necessarily have that sense of self-worth or the worthiness factor. And that does put people at a bit of a disadvantage. You and I are both using qualifying language, by the way. I tend to be quite direct. And I actually want to circle back and say about I love money because it offers freedom and opportunity and possibility. And if I've got money, I can lift other people up. So, for example, in my practice, I love Ting, our executive assistant. We're the same age, and I want to keep her with me. So, when Jim is no longer here in like 30 years, because he's just going to be here because he doesn't know that yet, but he likes being here. So he'll be here in a different capacity, and I'm going to be paying for Ting's salary. And that really motivates me. So going back to this idea of, and I'm sorry that I cut you off, I just wanted to
no,
really
that's
highlight
great.
the self belief and the worthiness factor because honestly, like I face it too. I faced imposter syndrome coming into the industry because I didn't pick it, and it is a calling though because I find that it's a calling if you're compelled just to dive into it and be in it, and you want to be in it and be surrounded by it, and you spend all your time and money and energy and effort being with it. That's a calling.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not really attached to an outcome. You're like, the outcome is there. It's very nebulous. Like, I'll be upfront. I only cracked six figures in my income this year. And I've been doing this. I've only been an associate only since like 2016. But, it's that slow burn. And you really just have to kind of keep one foot in front of the other. Just like they don't tell you what, I hate this term, but adulting is all about. It's about making your bed every day, brushing your teeth every day, planking
Habits.
for life. Like you got to do the do every day, and it will pay off.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
like that's
and saving money is a habit too. Just like,
hmm
deciding I'm going to treat myself to a nice cappuccino maker machine at home, and I only have one latte or one, coffee out of the house maybe a week now. That damn machine's paid for itself in 6 months. When you really get down to the minutia of, okay, where's my money whittling away? Why did my T4, my T4A, or whatever system you're in, why did it say I made this much? But at the end of the year, do I know where it's going? And, since I've become much more responsible, I'm going to use the word responsible, about my earnings over the last 4 or 5 years, because I hit 55 and I went, holy crap, I had a Freedom 55 plan, and now I'm 55 and I don't feel very free. but
wow.
um but it made me realize that I've had a really blessed existence. I've got to do pretty much everything I've wanted to do. I've done and I've accomplished, but there was an element of that was the reality of, like, am I going to live to 75? Am I going to live to 85? Am I going to be the bionic woman and have spare parts and live to 105? And if you're
Well,
if you're gonna if you're
I'm
gonna
gonna
support
add to that.
yourself
I'm gonna
into old age, you can't necessarily keep working at the level that you worked at in your 30s and 40s and not get to the end of the day and go, oh my God, I'm so tired. It's 10 o'clock. I can't believe I'm in bed already.
well, I
You
want to
have to
highlight
plan for
something that
that.
you said there. It's about how long your money's going to have to last in what we call a retirement, which really it's just financial independence. Like, when do you want to stop working? Because either you're going to stop working because you've had a health issue or a loved one has had a health issue. It's almost guaranteed that you're going to not be able to work at some point based on some factor that may or may not be of your willing. So the fact of the matter is, Canadians are now looking at fastest growing segments of the Canadian population, the centenarian, people over the age of 100. So if you're looking at having at least maybe your working career in retirement, like the length of time that you're working and then the length of time that you're not working, how are you going to afford to pay for that? Right?
A lot of people can't. And, it's a really, but it comes back to probably a lot of the decisions or situations they found themselves in their 30s and 40s and 50s, right?
Well, and that's kind of the beauty of why we're having this conversation in a sense, because it's not about feeling overwhelmed, like, oh, I'm not going to get there, or like, whoa, this is just like too much. Because it's life. This is life, and we have to pay to live. Because there is no free lunch, and freedom is really to be completely philosophical and a bit of a fatalist, because that's my leaning. You know, nobody is free. Not really. Very, very few people are free. And if they're financially free, they have other obligations because that's part of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
So, what it comes down to is, what can I do with what I have to optimize my experience?
Well, and how can I see, and this is the thing that I struggle with in when I'm trying to teach people when they come into this industry of real estate and they're all of a sudden realizing that they are business owners and they are entrepreneurs. Really, you are working not for a paycheck anymore. You are working on commission, which means you need to close a transaction and you need to find a way to work as a detached, what I call detached detachment, which I know is like an oxymoron, but to be completely detached in many regards to the outcome of how it affects you per se, because that's agency, right? Working in the best fiduciary duty, working in the best interest of your client. But at the same time, you have to trust the universe that you're good enough and that you have the skills and that you are able to help people so that you are going to be able to close enough transactions to support yourself. And that's a super scary thing in being on commission, and in that, in commission based industries, and especially for real estate, there is that perception that, you know most people are in it just for the money. But if they weren't in it to get a paycheck, what the hell are they doing? Do you know what I mean? It's sort of this oxymoron of, why should it be bad to be working for money? We're
Well,
all
this is what
working
comes
for
back to
money.
that. We've come full circle to, trauma of money, and it's the financial shame piece. And I mean, I have a lot of opinions, as you know, and a lot of
Which is
perspectives
why
about
I
the
love
different.
I love talking to you, and why I wanted you on the podcast. I'm really glad we finally figured a time, because I always find it really fascinating hearing your opinions on all sorts of different topics.
Well, thank you. I feel, sometimes when I'm like, oh, I've been given the microphone, because, I work in a very highly regulated industry, and I'm like, gotta mind my P's and Q's.
Yeah, me
Sound bites live on forever. I love money. I'm like, uh-oh.
too.
But I do, because of what it provides. And one of my big passions is about helping women become economically independent. And I really don't like the word empowered. It's like organic or holistic. But the thing is, it's all the pieces. And when women are doing better financially, they're very nurturing, they're very giving, they share what they have, they share their knowledge. And it makes for a better, healthier community. And that's what's really important, because we all are only as strong as our weakest link. So that's when we come back to that financial trauma. We look at that holistic wealth framework. Keisha, by the way, did a trauma of money course, and so did Chantel Chapman. I've taken both of them, so I'm dual licensed in that area. And I'm also taking a certificate for holistic healing, because even though I'm working in real numbers, right, death and taxes type style, the human element cannot be discounted. So if you're able to look at your emotional health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, it all ties into your financial health. And if you're lacking in any of those 5 areas, what how long can you sustain that? So
It's very, very true.
when we talk about the people in commission-based industries, of which I am one, many people don't know, but I'm self-employed. I'm very lucky because I'm under Jim's umbrella, and he has, an oil tanker of a practice. So I've got a great place from which to learn and to launch from. But I got to be honest with you, I've thought about, if I went on my own, like this is a, shark eat shark kind of world, and there's a lot to know, and your reputation and your word are what you're selling on. And I think for a lot of people, it comes back to that self belief piece, the worthiness piece, and the fact that people are already looking askance at you when you are in money based industries or money fueled industries like real estate, like wealth management. People are wondering, well, what's your agenda? Right? And somehow we have this puritanical perspective that it's impure. I think this is just my opinion, that people think people don't want to work with money, or somehow, you know, I don't want to say it on camera, but you know what I mean. Like we're
I
just
know
not
exactly what you mean.
not
And
held
it
in the highest regard. Like we're not,
well, and
you
I
know,
think it also comes down to, at least I'll speak for my own industry, every now and then there is a bad apple. Every now and then there's a bad apple, and that tends to make for a really good news day. And, a news cycle on an unfortunate incident that somebody may have done something that is completely, for all intents and purposes, just wrong and goes against whatever code of conduct or ethics that may be prescribed in your industry. And that's human nature. It doesn't mean every single person in that industry thinks that way or behaves that way, but it sure makes for a great news day in the industry of media to have negativity. And I think one of the things I really sort of see as a double-edged sword of social media is there's actually a lot of people in financial industries doing great things as well. And for people to be able to tell their stories and show the value that they bring to the table through their actual performance and their actions, I think that's, to me, that's one of the better sides of when you're self-employed, the kind of self-promotion that is not just, oh, I've got this statistic, I'm the best. It's like, no, I have 100 referrals from past clients of anybody that I'll give you their name and you can call them and they will tell you what it's like to work with me. To me, that's more of a value than having a bus ad, or having to buy into the, what I call, the sort of ego driven marketing, as opposed to the service based, this is what I do, this is how I like to work. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but
I'm going to circle back on something with that. With the thing is, the bus ad, for example, it's credibility because you have to have money to pay for that ad. So if you've got the money to pay for that ad, that buys you the credibility in the eye of the consumer, because they're like, well, they couldn't afford to do that if they didn't have clients. If they got clients, then there must be something there, right? And I think we have to remember, you spoke about human nature there. We're all animals in fancy clothes. We all operate on instinct. And that is one of the core concepts in the trauma of money teachings. It's just, how is the brain structured, right? It's neuroscience. And desire, pleasure, wanting, liking, all the things, right? And so I look at it like, we do have bad apples in our industry as well, in any industry, medicine, finance, anything with any power attached to it, right, is going to have some type of like shadow side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, motherhood, even, right? So, and nonprofits. So, I think the thing is really operating from your values and understanding the values of the person that you're doing business with, really getting to know the person before you take that leap. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you can understand what drives them, then you can recognize them in yourself, and that self knowledge, I think, is where the work needs to be done. And that's where I want to be able to come in and just have conversations, because I think it's through conversation for a lot of people that they have that recognition of, oh, I had not even thought about that. And if you know better, then maybe you'll do better. It depends, right? But at least you have the awareness to make an informed decision.
I think that is so valid. And when you first start consulting with somebody, is there a type of questionnaire or an opening conversation that leads you
Mm.
to like decide if this is a client that you want to work with? Because I think it's very two-sided. At
Oh,
least it
it's an
is for me.
interview, right? Yeah.
I've come across people where I'm like, no, I don't really want to work with that person. I don't think that we're going to be a good fit. But and then there's other people that I know it's going to be a great fit. But what are some of the sort of key things you like to ask people when you are entering into those conversations?
I mean, it's going to be different for everybody that you talk to, because we're all unique. Our iris, our bite plate, our fingerprints, our DNA is so unique to us that to template off of another encounter or another experience, it's impossible, actually, because it's going to be even slightly different. And if you look at the course plane on an airplane, for example, if you're even a degree off your destination, you're going to be miles off of the runway. So I like to come into every interaction, every day actually. One of my values is tabula rasa, and that means blank slate, because you just don't know what you don't know, right? So when we talk about asking questions, it really comes down to, well, where are you relative to where you want to be? Do you know where you want to be? What have you
Do
done
you
so
even know where
far
you
to get
are?
there? Well, and quite frankly, a lot of us are like, well, we're here because we're here because we're here. And I've been
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah.
So it's kind of about like letting go of that fear and that shame, because and that's really like that's so difficult to do, because how did we protect ourselves to get us this far in the world, right? We created the world that we live in, and we didn't, I like to say, like, we didn't just end up here. So however we got here, it's going to take time maybe to undo that, or relearn, or deprogram, and or reprogram, however you say it. But the whole nugget is, are you looking for someone to help you on that path, and are you willing to pay for the advice, and keeping in mind that advice is only as good as the person that you're asking.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Very.
work from a very heart centered approach, and we need to have trust. We need to have an honest conversation. And Jim said this first, so I didn't take it, but I bring it up in almost every meeting I deal with, even current clients that have been here for decades. We don't keep secrets from our priest or our financial planner. Because we're not here to judge, but if we don't have your variables, we can't give you an accurate projection. And that's what we do when we work with people. We input your information, family dynamics, like, are you married? Do you file your taxes together? We ask a lot of very personal questions. Your kids become part of the plan. And even though people might not be doing their finances together or filing together or anything like that, you still need to have all of the items in the plan to be able to say, okay, but realistically, this is what you could be looking at.
Right.
Right? And if we don't know, we actually can't advise, because that would be in the form of medicine. It would be like medical malpractice to give a prescription or a diagnosis without proper um, information.
That happens in our business all the time too, when you haven't asked if all of the decision makers are present.
Well,
There is nothing more offside, in my opinion, than suddenly, 3 or 4 weeks into a process, you've shown a bunch of houses, and all of a sudden a parent shows up. Well, actually, it's not really my decision. My folks are giving us the money. They want to come see the ones we like. Oh, okay. Well, then they should be here the whole time,
okay, I'm going
right?
to highlight that. I'm going to highlight that because Jim has a practice standard, and I do uphold it, although my view is a little bit different because I believe there are shades to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that initial meeting, if you're just meeting someone to do a big ticket transaction, whether it's real estate, whether it's a portfolio, an investment type of interaction, you need to feel confident and have trust in the person that you're going to be asking to do this work with you. And when we say, hey, we like to have the meeting with both partners present from the very beginning, in our practice, that's the standard. And I say, well, yes, but if we've just met the person who's saying they'd like to speak further, they might not have enough of a read on the situation to bring in the other partner quite yet. So I have
Mm-hmm.
a bit of a longer sales cycle. I tend to take it through a few conversations. It's kind of at your comfort level. Where do you feel like you want to take this? And it's more putting you in the driver's seat, then and I'm there and I'm guiding, right? And I'm here, I call it like being, pathways to possibilities, because they're endless. What you're able to do with your one life, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
money is so fantastic, because it gives you the option. But when it comes to having all the decision makers around the table, I think that is that's a process.
I agree, and I agree with a caveat, because I'm pretty sure at some point in your process you need to fill out the same kind of FinTrack information that we do in our transactions when we are reporting to the government where the money's actually coming from for the transactions. So maybe there's a gift letter, maybe there's some transfer of generational wealth where um, the decision is still made by the the purchaser, but the parents, because they're giving a large sum, they do want to have some kind of say in it. I just like to know heads up going in, and I kind of have to know because of our FinTrack reporting requirements, where the money's actually going to come, the qualification. But qualification can be nuanced too. I mean, you don't necessarily just want to sit down and the first thing you say is, okay, where's your money coming from? Like let's get right to the point. Do you have any money? Are we going to be able to do this? I mean, yes, that's definitely part of the qualifying conversation, but it's, to me, I don't necessarily like to feel like, there shouldn't be any shame around being able to tell your advisor in whatever financial situation you're in that you are fortunate enough to be getting help from your family.
Different strokes for different folks, and that's something
Exactly,
I've come
right?
to learn in the practice. Like, I love a type A. I'm a AAA battery. If I can just come on like the Friday Night Lights so we can solve your problem like tickety boo in one meeting, done and dusted, beautiful. I love the
Yeah.
idea of like BBD, but in the sense of like be brief, be brilliant, be done.
Yeah.
But that is not for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's definitely the different personalities to take into consideration. It's just, I think from a regulatory standpoint, I don't think clients often understand how much regulatory background there
Mm.
is in our industries, where
Mhm.
it's almost like the government's mandated all these forms and all this information, and we have to nuance, our requirements with, still making sure our clients feel comfortable having those conversations with
You know how
us.
I frame that? I frame that because we ask a lot of very private questions, like how much is in your bank account, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
are there any children outside of marriage? Like we get in
Oh,
bed with our clients.
that could be a juicy one.
Oh my goodness. Like I love this industry for so many reasons, but like it's never a dull moment and every day is different. And like the things that you would see and hear, it's like wow, it's like just like this is living. But and it's not all about the salacious or
Yeah.
salacious elements, right? But it does keep things interesting. And more
Well,
importantly, it's that these things need to be planned for because in the Wills, Estates, and Succession Act in BC, the will can be contested, right? So if you've got anything kind of hanging out there in the sidelines that could come back after you're no longer here, what do you want your legacy to look like? And when I talk to clients about, the I guess what you're talking about is it's quite onerous, the process of getting your paperwork put through and getting the account set up. It's a lot
mm-hmm.
and it gets very personal and it's dry and time consuming. But at the end of the day, Canadians are very well looked after in many aspects of their financial and other health, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
perfect, but comparatively to the rest of the world, we're not doing too bad.
Yes, the regulator, the nanny state is there ultimately to protect the interests of the average person doing a financial transaction. And I guess that's the way we have to look at it.
Yeah. So like going kind of coming full circle to the initial elements of the conversation about the trauma of money and healing, we all could heal in some way, shape, or form. And we talk about, the government's intervention and whatnot. I mean, again, people are all going to have their perspectives about why we have the regulations and the protocols that we have. But I think fundamentally, we all want to be living our best life. And how do we go about doing that? Well, number one, if you're not happy with how the government runs the country or the province, you got to get active and get involved. I'm not going to get on my soapbox about it, but
Me
a
neither.
I come from a
Because I
government
could go
family
there
and
for the
a
rest of the
couple of
day.
I've got a couple of journalists for parents. I have a diplomat father, and I grew up in the system, and so I get it. But you got to be an active participant, whether it's in how the country is run, or whether it's in how your family household is run. Because if you don't know how to make the decisions that you're ultimately going to be asked to make, and that's the thing about having all the decision makers at the table, we don't want someone else making a decision that either we're going to have to clean up later or live with later.
Mm-hmm.
So you want
That
to
is
ask the
very true.
questions up front. You want to lay all your cards on the table and just have that honest, shame-free conversation. Because the thing is, we all have it. We all have the shame. We all have the questions. So you're not going to be doing anybody, including yourself, any good if you're not asking the questions to get the clarity that you need to make the decision that's going to be in your best interest and your family's best interest.
Well,
And you
I
got to
think that
do the work. That's the
do
other
the
thing.
work. Do the work. When it comes down to it, you just have to do the work. Well, Paige, speaking of doing the work, I really appreciate us having this time together. And I look forward to us meeting again face to face shortly, maybe after your grand tour vacation. And have a wonderful time on your
Thank
break.
you.
And
Thank
try
you.
not. I know that it's actually easier to check in on emails than to worry about it your whole vacation. So I totally get that. I support you in that.
Thank you. It's all about comfort, right?
Yeah, yeah. What works for you? And you know
Yeah.
yourself well enough to know that going a couple days without checking in is more stressful than the actual check in.
You know what? I want to highlight that, Shelly, and say to everybody who's listening to the podcast here, number one, thank you for staying with us this long. I hope you found something useful. And number two, give yourself what you need. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
so often we're driving ourselves very hard. You know, there's always going to be another carrot. There's always going to be another brass ring. But you got to look up one day and kind of say, why is my house overrun with rabbits?
Where did all these rabbits come from?
It's all the
They
dang
just kind of
carrots.
multiplied on themselves.
Yeah. So go forth and prosper, everybody.
Go forth and prosper, and we shall see you again soon. We'll have Paige on again later. Maybe
Thank
she'll
you.
have some amazing experiences about money when she's traveling. I always do.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Shelly.
Thanks, everyone.